full of outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Hello and welcome to Teachers Talk Radio Education Tonight. And after a momentous week in British politics, this week we're going to start to dissect some of the research analysis that's come as a post-election special tonight. But before we kick off tonight, I just want to say a big thank you to our sponsors. And as always on Education Tonight, we start by saying hello, John. John Catt Educational, and you can visit the website there with the JCTTR 2425 for 20% off books to just get your CPD whirling for the summer holidays. Who else are we joined by? And we'd say thanks to Teaching How To's, and you can visit their website at teachinghowtos.com to see what they've got for you, which is fantastic. We've also got Reading Solutions UK, and you can visit solutionsuk.co.uk and sign up for their free videos that they've got there, which is fantastic. Thank you very much, Reading Solutions. And finally, Apps for Good. And you can visit their website, www.appsforgood.org. So thank you very much for our sponsors. And I'm really pleased tonight to say I'm joined once again in Brent's absence, as he called me in the week to say he's off to the jungle in Borneo, as he's meant to be putting tonight's show together. So good evening to Hannah Wilson, who is going to step in again for Brent. So good evening, Hannah. Are you okay?
Hello, thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry to the people that were tuning in and expecting lovely Brent's face, but we have a special appearance, but you've got me a bit longer.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of think that he doesn't want to do it anymore. That's why he's kind of prolonging his absence. He only wants to be parachuted into Teachers Talk Radio events that have the words special with them. So we're going to have Neve Sweeney with us tonight, but unfortunately she's ill. So we wish her all the best, and hope she gets well. But it still stands with the Labour winning the landslide election this time last week. We were all kind of trotting off to our local churches, schools, community centres to vote. We're going to have a little look at kind of what does the picture look like a kind of week in. Certainly the Department of Education starting to put their chess pieces in place, the cabinet starting to build. So I'll have a bit of a look at that. We've also this week I've also kind of jumped on a story which I wasn't really aware of. I've never taught in the expressive arts, but I am kind of a key advocate of the expressive arts, and so it'd be really interesting to know. They've started to put together kind of curriculum for drama, which I think kind of, you think about kind of previous politicians, Tony Blair in particular, there was always that stuff about him being in the kind of university drama group, and kind of the importance of expressive arts within education. And I know that Hannah is a huge advocate of that as well as an art teacher. So it'd be interesting kind of to dissect kind of what that looks like and what it can look like kind of going forward. But I put this kind of meme that came up on social media this week about it's bizarre how the year seems to kind of go incredibly fast, and then the last week or the last couple of weeks seems to kind of just drag and drag and drag and drag. So I just thought this was kind of funny, and you might be feeling this at the minute, that it just seemed certainly that last week of school just seems to really kind of drag out. I don't know if it's because you're just exhausted, or it's all the adrenaline just washing off you, or whatever. But it's it just seems to stand still time. And I don't know what your week's been like, Hannah, but it seems to kind of it's almost froze. Time's froze at the minute, and I'm just ready to break up. Are you?
Yeah, I feel like a snail trying to reach that finish line at the moment. I've got 1 more week to go. I can see it, I can feel it, but it's still just so far.
Still too far away to even dream of. I've just got tomorrow, which is kind of then I work in FE, so it's not the same. We don't have holidays, but it's working from home and a bit more. It's a bit more relaxed. You can kind of be your own boss for a bit in terms of the day itself, and you don't have to get up at like 6 a.m. to kind of get to work, which is good as well. It's one of the benefits of having that bit of flexibility within the FE sector. Another story that I just want to kind of just bring up, because I think this is kind of very telling, that kind of links in with that as people kind of finish the school year. Adrian Charles has written a really interesting piece in yesterday's Guardian about how brutal schools can be, and it's really interesting that the headline there is kind of the title of the piece is "Congratulations to anyone who's just made it through another year." And that's so sad in some respects, but it's kind of so true, isn't it? And it's such a brutal experience for everyone involved. There's as teachers in the pub on a Friday when they break up, it's like people returning from the front line. It's like they are really kind of they've got all the scars of the year. They're absolutely exhausted, as you just said. You kind of like a snail, kind of just trying to kind of reach the end line. But it almost feels like the end of a year is such an achievement. The quote there says, whenever I meet an 18-year-old leaving school or college, my first thought isn't how their exams have gone or what they're doing next. I just want to know if they're okay physically, mentally. They're in one piece. And just before the show, Hannah, you were saying that we've all done it. We've all done those kind of 6-7 hour lesson days. This is what students are doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I was on enrichment last week, and unfortunately we've had a couple of teachers off. So the teacher that was meant to team teach it with me ended up going elsewhere, and I had a lovely invigilator come and help me. But alas, she was not an art teacher. So I had 4 whole days of 6 lessons. And on the Monday, one of the trips left early, so I was on cover on that day. So I had a whole week of teaching all day, every day. And my gosh, I was absolutely ruined. I completely fell asleep probably most nights on the sofa. And I'm like, actually, the kids do this all day, every day. So we do need to give them more credit than potentially we do, because we as teachers get that break and that mental kind of recharge in our PPA. But my gosh, if we were doing it all day, every day, it's a whole nother level.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I've been kind of slightly removed from the secondary sector for a while now. But I always thought it was weird that you kind of, as a kid, you kind of jump from a computer science lesson with me or a business studies lesson with me into a double science, onto double maths, bit of PE, and then something else, and then back into kind of after school clubs and whatever afterwards. It is a really brutal experience. So, as always, and I think we've mentioned it a few times on education tonight about kind of mental health, how important it is. But as we are kind of getting towards the end of the year, again, just reflect on yourself, just check in with yourself. And, at the end of the day, it is a job. I know it's an important job and everything else, but everyone's health is really important. But someone who is already on their jollies is Mr. Poland, who sent us quite a remarkable picture to say he was off on his travels and he wouldn't be doing the show this week. Straight away, I think almost within 10 seconds, Tom Rogers correctly identified that's almost an identical match to the Crocodile Dundee hats and everything. It's Steve Irwin, isn't he? He's absolutely kind of, I think he's brought the I'm going on a international excursion kit off Amazon, and off Brent goes. But very kindly, he has sent us a little bit of a message, which we can play you.
Hello there, Education Tonight. Sorry I can't be with you. I am currently in 32 degrees. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, Malaysian time. I'm in a city called Kuching, capital of Sarawak. I'm off to the jungle, the mighty jungle, where the lion sleeps tonight to meet the orangutans. Right turn, Clyde. And I thought I'd put this together for Adam, because he's flying solo this week. and he asked me to put a little piece together about standing as a political candidate in a general election as a teacher, which was difficult. I will grant you. Teaching's a full-time job. Like many people, I teach 40+ hours a week, multiple subjects, multiple year groups. And Rishi Sunak caught us out because even though I had been a nominated candidate for quite some time, I hadn't sort of expected the election to be when the election was. I was kind of hoping it would be later in the year, especially not exam time. And there's some memories which I would go into in greater detail, but I haven't got enough data to send everything. So a couple of memories that I have, and a couple of difficulties standing as a teacher and a political candidate, and also some general observations of the general election as regards education. And the first thing, obviously, it's difficult when you're a full-time teacher, 40+ hours a week, multiple subjects in exam time as well. And one of the ironies was that the day I was handing in my deposit, my 10 signatures, because that's what you need as a candidate, and my nomination forms for my party. It takes a bit of organisation to get that together. And you have a briefing with the Electoral Commission and the council. They go through all the rules. Don't gamble. Hello. And be a real candidate. And obviously make sure the signatures are by people who know that they are putting their name to signing for you, that they're a registered voter in your constituency. So all those things have to be adhered to. The £500 is counted, and then you're on the nomination papers. That afternoon, my students, just as I was handing in those papers, were setting their GCSE exam paper, their second exam paper, history paper. And what was the topic? None other than the suffragists and the suffragettes and the campaign to win the vote. So as their teacher, who has taught them all about democracy, is handing over his papers, they're setting their exam papers. And I thought that was a lovely sort of signal of why it's important, even as an educator, to model. Because we often say about modelling. Modelling's the new thing these days, and deliberate practice. Well, it comes up with this nonsense sometimes. We've been doing it for years. Of course we model good behaviour. That's what we do as teachers. We show the kids, we demonstrate it to them, and then we, in turn, say this is the value of it. So I've often felt, as a history teacher, as a former citizenship coordinator, it's always important to practice what we preach. And I know British values is something that they made up to promote sort of an identity. But actually there's some value in that. I really think there is.
I don't know whether that's all we got of Brent. So I don't know whether that was the video gods cutting him off there, or whether that was his natural end.
It's hard to know an end time, but it does eventually stop. It's important that I'll tell the listeners that I gave Brent the brief of a 30-second video that we could send in. But it is phenomenal, and I think it's just an interesting kind of case study. I think there was kind of 20, 25 current teachers who were in the election, and I haven't kind of checked on them all. I will do that. We did me and Hannah and Paul and Chris and a few others kind of did a education election special where we did have some candidates on. I don't know if you noticed that Brent there was actually a candidate on that show rather than a host. But obviously Brent's not on this list that was published by Schools Week. So there's obviously more out there who've not kind of given their information to Schools Week. But it's a huge challenge. I know it's something kind of I've thought about in the past and I've kind of moved away from, because it's a huge challenge. And, there's that whole thing about kind of being impartial as a teacher. Where does that stand? I talked to Brent during the election about kind of how you get this balance between, you are standing in the constituency where you have students and parents. And 1 minute you're saying I'm an impartial teacher, I'm in the classroom, and the next minute you're posting a letter through someone's letterbox to say don't listen to the current government, and we are standing very firmly against some of their policies. And and Brent kind of taught me through kind of how that kind of balancing act kind of goes, and it is a challenge, and and fair play to kind of anybody that's puts themselves through that kind of very public scrutiny, because it is challenging, and I wish Brent all the best on his trip to Borneo, and maybe it doesn't look that relaxing. I don't think it's going to be a kind of all-inclusive experience, but you know, I'm sure that's very much like his cup of tea. I'm sure some of the national talk show radios will be glad of just a bit of a break from Brent calling up at kind of six in the morning with his thoughts. But all the best, Brent, and I hope you have a nice time out there. And we've talked before. We did a show. I think it was about this time last year, because I was out in Portugal on doing something with the Turing scheme and how important trips are, and again the stresses and strains that come with trips. And you know, we are parents at that point to students as well as teachers. So the election's been, we all know the outcome, Labour landslide. So very quickly we start to see a bit like a football manager analogy from last night. Still kind of in my head. I kind of a late night last night, kind of watching the game. But the picking your team really is what kind of Keir Starmer's doing. And obviously Bridget Phillipson was very prominent part of that election campaign. But she started to now put her team together at the Department of Education. So I thought it'd be interesting, Hannah, just to have a quick look at who these people are. And they put some familiar faces, but maybe not some not so familiar faces. And even as we were speaking, kind of coming into tonight's show and putting the prep tonight's show, these things are changing and new people are being added. But there are some key figures. Obviously, we've got Bridget Phillipson, which we know. We've got Annalise Dodds, and we'll come on to her in a second. Catherine McKinnell, Jeanette Darby, and Stephen Morgan. So I think with everything with this new cabinet, one of the first things to comment on, and I wonder if you've got kind of any thoughts, Hannah, that you want to bring in on this, the general cabinet, and we can see now from the Department of Education, is very kind of female heavy. Which is fantastic.
I'm a massive advocate of women in leadership. It's lovely to see, and hopefully that will kind of filter down. There's definitely not enough women in leadership in schools, and I'm on a course doing my leadership, and that we call it the women. But there's a women's group within it, and we call the 10% braver, because quite often it's we don't say what we want to say, or we don't. I think, what is it? Is it something like women will wait until they have 90% of their criteria to apply for a job, whereas a man will apply when they're on 60%? And actually, we need to go for these positions a bit earlier and have more faith in ourselves. So hopefully that will trickle down. We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm hopeful now, as you know, as our girls in schools see these pictures coming up as well. It's a huge change, and you know. There's lots of subjects that are struggling to kind of get girls to take them. We could do so many shows on different issues with girls in school. But as you said, one of the key thing is that a lot of girls, and then they go on to be women, don't actually just put themselves forward to do the big jobs, which is such a shame. But this is such a positive thing that we're seeing generally. However, now they are the government. They will be scrutinized, and we'll have a look at them as well. The other key thing to look at, and this is a fantastic graphic that's put together for teachers to put up in their classrooms. I was going to say bedrooms then, but that would just be weird, wouldn't it? Some history teachers might want to put this on their bedroom walls. Simon Beale, follow on Twitter, it's absolutely superb. But this is just a great graphic. Just to show, well, first of all, about humanities generally, and how many of the cabinets are have studied humanities in the first instance. Which is superb. A lot of history there. Hopefully, there's kind of, and anyone that's wondering, there's that question: why should I choose geography? Where you can see there's a minister there with a geography degree at the bottom. It's not the classic. We've got the only one that's got the classic is Yvette Cooper, the kind of PPE subject that a lot of the previous administrations have had, including Labour in the past. So it's really interesting kind of seeing the makeup of the cabinet and the individuals within it. The Sutton Trust then broke that down even further and had a look at, from the current cabinet, how many of the cabinet have actually come from a private education or independent sector. And, you know, I think, Hannah, you really zoomed in on the screen when you looked, because it's almost non-existent at the bottom. You know, if you're watching this on your phone, you really need to kind of stare close to that, because it's right at the bottom there. The Keir Starmer cabinet is at just 4% are privately educated. And you can see how that's gone. I mean, Labour have always been lower than Conservative governments, but that's quite stark, isn't it, Anna?
Yeah, it's. I just found it really shocking. I've never seen any data like this. So to see that pretty much it is all the Labour kind of governments have all been around the kind of between 25 and 35, and the Conservatives have been so high. Obviously, the outlier is May, who was on 30%, but for them to drop to 4%, it's not like a slight drop; it's a massive drop. And I feel like having those people in those roles, having been through what the lives that they've had, is going to massively change kind of the way the country's run, and I'm quite excited for it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think certainly those individuals. And if you could just put the slide up with the meet the ministerial team from the Department of Education, especially those individuals as well. You know, it's hopefully they will start to kind of set policies that resonate with people that work kind of in that field, because that was always the criticism, is that you know, you don't know how it can be in a secondary school or a comprehensive school if you've never been to one. So it'll be interesting, it'll be taxing for them to kind of get that right. I do want to kind of go through a bit of a who's who. Annalise Dodds is a kind of interesting character that's been around Labour for a while, and almost instantly, I'm looking at the Express here, almost kind of got straight into a kind of running battle with everyone's favourite author, J.K. Rowling, on kind of you know, the definition of a woman, almost straight away. So it's interesting kind of how that, I think that's going to be an evolving story, and maybe we'll touch on this again as I go through some of the kind of key Labour policies and some of the things that were kind of in the pipeline from the previous administration, because obviously for a large proportion of the right-wing media / kind of audience, gender is still a kind of important topic for them, and I think they are going to really go for Annalise Dodds on this. And it's interesting, that's already kind of within days of her being in post, there was that kind of that conversation straight away. Catherine McKinnell is an interesting, like a bit like Bridget Phillipson, comes from the kind of northeast. She was born in Newcastle, has been a kind of a Newcastle and North MP since 2010. Again, has attended comprehensive school. Another interesting fact about her is that she managed to fight off Mark Lehan, a free school founder and former head of the New Schools Network and Parents and Teachers for Excellence in the 2019 election. So she's one of those kind of survivors of that election. So that's quite interesting. She's also a big advocate for a very quick reform to Ofsted, which is something we're going to revisit next week. And that's and we've got that kind of review of the alternative Ofsted survey that went out, and we're going to kind of see where we are with that. Her thoughts are that Ofsted in itself is adding to the recruitment and retention crisis, and they're providing very little useful information to parents. So she's a kind of interesting character at the heart of the Department of Education that has no love for the current Ofsted framework, And she's also a big advocate for bringing back the joy into learning. She's quoted in the test last year of how much she thinks about the kind of the enjoyment of actual teaching and learning and being in the school. So if we look back at kind of Adrian Charles's kind of article earlier about this brutal system that children are put into, that she's a real advocate of bringing back some of the joy of learning and the joy of education, particularly that kind of seems to, I say seems in inverted commas, seems to die out a little bit as children leave secondary school. But she's very close to Bridget Phillipson. I'm just going to just go through a few more, if that's okay, Hannah. I just want to go through Janet Darby. She has, again, a bit like Anna with Stephen Morgan, they are a big advocate to deliver better childcare and early education. And I think we've heard some kind of comments from Bridget Phillipson already about almost doing a lot of this reform bottom up and kind of looking long term. In economics, we call it kind of cathedral thought, this long term kind of strategy around education. And we've also got a Jackie Smith as well, who you've probably seen on the TV and that type of thing, but she was in the Tony Blair government, so she's got that kind of wider experience. So that's the kind of the team, as it were, that they're putting forward, and almost straight away, one of the things that Bridget Phillipson did from day one was to send this letter to the education workforce. That's how it was kind of billed on the kind of the government website. I want to take this moment to mark the reset in our relationship. Under this new government, education will once again be at the heart of change and at the forefront of national life. I can't wait to start working with you to transform the system that young people, so young people get skills, care, and opportunities they deserve. And it's a bit like it's that classic thing of bingo at the minute. They're very good at kind of pinning down on some words, but you listen to Bridget Phillipson a lot, you hear this word opportunity come up a lot. It's always about opportunity with her. She's a big advocate for opportunity. She also talks in there of the scar of child poverty, the severe financial squeezes put on your budget. She's mentioned high workload, climbing vacancy rates, which is a kind of interesting euphemism for an absolute crisis in education. That's a strange kind of word, climbing. It is climbing. Yeah, it's almost like vertical. It's a big climb. It's like a rock face. Strain on care, mental health, and SEND services, among many other issues that have made your jobs increasingly difficult. This is a tough inheritance. None of these will have quick and easy solutions, but I work with and will try and find practical ways forward. And I think we've got an actual clip of Bridget Phillipson addressing the teachers and the workforce almost from day one.
I know teachers and heads right across the country will have woken up nervous this morning as Key Stage 2 assessment results, or SATs, are released to schools. So first, let me say a big thank you and well done to all of the school staff, including support staff, who I know put so much time into preparing children for these tests earlier in the year. But let me also say that this government will see you as more than just your test results. I've written to all education workforces, making crystal clear that under this government, teachers and school staff will be truly valued for the life-changing impact that you have every single day. I want teachers to once again feel like they can concentrate on and be valued for the thing that they do best, improving the life chances of all of our children. Thank you for everything that you do, and I hope that you can feel really proud of your results today.
Okay. Hannah, what's your kind of initial thoughts of the team that's going to take education forward?
It's just a bit of a stark difference compared to the previous one, isn't it? It's the way she's addressing us, the way she's talking to us. It seems like she's on our side, and is potentially listening and understands what teachers are really worried about. I do completely agree that there's not a quick fix for this. And so it will be interesting to see what they do. But it does genuinely feel like they have kind of listened and kind of understood where the issues are. But I also find it very interesting that it's like the language, like, we're going to do this, we support you, we're really proud of you. Like, it's a very different languages, as opposed to like, teachers are this, teachers are that, teachers need to get on board. It's less kind of dictating to us and more like, we're going to get through this together, which I quite like.
Yeah, I mean, you always get that bit of a bounce, because all you need to be when you take over, like if you take over a job, you just need to not be the person that's left just for a little bit, and that kind of gives you some kind of headwind going forward. It's interesting to me that word opportunity has come up, but again, we had this kind of conversation with Freddie Whitaker from Schools Week. We're still very lacking on detail from the Department of Education about how we actually do things. I think they've got a bit of a kind of headspace with summer coming up, to actually kind of get their heads around kind of what they do want to kind of work on. But there are some pressing things that need to be sorted. One of the things is the key policy from the election, which was, I think, it wasn't criticised so much, but it was criticised for the lack of ambition. I don't think it was criticised in terms of the want to employ more teachers. But the 6,500 when it first got announced seemed incredibly low at the time. I think Nick Robinson, the interview with Keir Starmer on when they did the kind of one-to-one interviews on the BBC, I think he worked it out to be less than half a teacher, or just over half a teacher per secondary state school. So it's a kind of puny amount, really, compared to kind of what we need. However, they have started, and we do have a advert to try and inspire the next generation. So if we can have a quick look at the ad that's kind of come out.
Imagine a career where your impact lasts a lifetime. Now, we could only focus on the good stuff. Job security, career advancement, the camaraderie, not being stuck behind a desk all day. But you might remember school days weren't always sunshine and laughter for the teachers. There'll be challenges. You'll have to be resilient. You'll need to guide young people through highs and lows.
You're going to talk first and then we're going to hear your side.
But on the other side of those hurdles are the biggest rewards. Helping them learn, grow and thrive, you can be part of their journey.
Right guys, in 3, 2...
Teaching. Change lives, make a difference.
That was sent out by the National Institute of Teaching. Do you think that's a bit more realistic in terms of what is expected from a teacher, or is it still keeping a little bit of the realities of the job kind of hidden?
I think everybody does. I think that's why teachers are so kind of vocal about everything that we do, because I think there's an unrealistic kind of narrative about what teaching is. And that's the thing, everyone thinks it's rainbows and sunshines and lots of lovely holidays, but there is a real grueling side to it. But then there is like the resilience and the things like that. You do learn and you do adapt, and it does get easier. But also there is so much reward in it. Like I truly love what I do, and I live and breathe to see students turn it around and achieve. And I just love watching and seeing them grow. But it is, if you're in the wrong school, it's really difficult. And I think that's kind of more of it. Like, I think if we can get these new teachers into the right schools with the right atmosphere, then they're more likely to stay in teaching because they get it. But I think there's a lot that needs to be sorted out in schools in terms of kind of dictating down and workload and things. And I know we had one of the schools on last night talking to me and Tom about their strike action. I think it is that, like, it needs to be, if you get the right school where you're encouraged and understood, as opposed to kind of told, this is what's going to happen, this is what we're going to do, and you don't onboard everybody properly, then it can be really like a really tough profession. But like, hopefully they, like, yeah, if we give them the right skills, I think that's really important as well. And having the right people teaching these teachers how to be teachers is also really important.
Yeah, I'd love a group of teachers to do a parody kind of advert and see what that looks like. We'll go into obviously that's bringing people in, but that doesn't stop the kind of leak at the we're going to say the wrong phrase there, the other end, to try and stop them kind of leaving. So should we just take a quick pause to have our adverts for our sponsors today?
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncatbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Have you ever heard of teaching how-tos? Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now it's a reality with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalised, socialised platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively, or with their peers, or with their new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for their next webinar. Are you looking for the best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Watch sessions by leaders in education, literacy experts, and EdTech specialists from the International Reading Conference for free. The 3-day conference explores a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and all key stages. Sign up to receive the recordings for free at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk. Apps for Good gives schools free introductory computing courses. The courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create a prototype app for good. Visit www.appsforgood.org to find out more.
Brilliant, and thank you for all of those supporting Education Tonight and Teachers Talk Radio. It's really interesting listening to one of those adverts that talked about kind of AI, and there's been numerous podcasts, shows on AI, but it's really interesting that the Tony Blair Institute they did a big thing yesterday about called The Future of Britain, and although the headlines were stolen by the NHS and AI, it's really interesting. They also have a paper on governing in an age of AI requires radical yet practical thinking and reimagining of the 21st century, and particularly kind of the role education plays within that. So that'll be kind of interesting, kind of evolving. I know that the Department of Education previously had looked at AI, and I know that Gillian Keegan had gone to the BETS conference last year and did a speech about kind of AI and some of those kind of innovations that can come into teaching. But I think that might be something kind of coming forward. So I think it's one to watch with AI, and particularly kind of Bridget Phillipson, see how she kind of adapts some of the work that would have already gone on within the Department of Education around AI. But they the team is in, so that's what we did on that kind of first half. We looked at that team, kind of looked at the key players. However, the pressure is kind of already on them. And on your screen there, you can see the letter that Daniel Kebedy, the General Secretary of the NEU, sent to Bridget Phillips. And I know a lot of the unions have already been in to kind of see them, including kind of Daniel. But there is this pressing matter at the minute around kind of teachers' pay. So we looked at the advert, we looked at the policy about the 6,500 teachers wanting to kind of, the Labour government kind of wanting to get into teaching. But unless there's something kind of radical at the other end to stop the hemorrhaging, 6,500 teachers is going to seem very weak very quickly. The schools teachers review body report it should have been due to give its recommendations as the election was there. So as it says there, despite having received it weeks before the general election was called, your predecessor, the Secretary of State, has failed to publish this report. Teachers and school leaders have been left completely in the dark about their recommendations and the previous government's intentions on implementation of these recommendations. This is despite your predecessor committing, as part of the resolution to last year's Teachers' Pay Dispute, to align the timing of the STRB process with the school's budget cycle. So this is going to be something, and we kind of brought it with Freddie Whitaker from Schools Week a couple of weeks ago. We did an election special on the Labour manifesto. This is going to be a pressing argument that's going to be on head teachers, school governors, MATs bosses, desk as we speak, to know kind of where this is going to land in September. What are your thoughts, Hannah? It seems like a bit of an obvious question, but are teachers due a pay rise, or are we sticking at the minute?
I mean, I don't know whether I am the obvious one. I'm always like, I mean, we're not in it for the money, but obviously the money would be good. And from somebody who's had their mortgage go up by £1,000 a month, thank you, Liz Trust, I would love a pay rise. But also, I'd rather that the schools are funded better so that I'm not working as hard. I'd much rather my mental health be better due to my workload as opposed to being paid more, is kind of where I'm at. And I know that like a lot of schools were kind of promised this money and then it didn't happen and then they've had to cut. And then I dread to think what next year is going to be. I think next year is going to be harder than this year, because unless they get that money in early, I don't think we'll see it till the following year, because I don't think it'll be revised till April, and then we'll get it September the year after. And I think this year is going to be really tough on schools, because I think it's something crazy like 40% are going to be in a deficit this year because of the way that they've been messed around and told budgets late on and changes of what they thought it is and changing the goalposts. So I think they're right in asking. It needs to be clear, and we need to know exactly what's going to happen. Yes, we'd all love a pay rise, everybody would, but I think also it's really important that we know that schools are funded properly as well.
Yeah, so it's that kind of wider thing that I know kind of Kevin Courtney and his team negotiated, that this wasn't going to be just pushed onto schools when there was a pay rise, when they settled the dispute. But I think Daniel Kebedy has been very clear that this has to be something that is resolved. It was a pause rather than a stop, to kind of get children back into school and to stop that disruption. But I don't think kind of the Labour Party. The reason I'm saying Labour Party is because normally they're a party that's more aligned to the unions than the Conservative Party. Will be let off the hook just because they are Labour. I think kind of the NEU in particular wants some movement on this. They feel they've got some kind of traction within the membership on this. They feel like it's very well supported generally at the start of the dispute last time. So I think they're going to put some real pressure on this, and it could cause this new government a bit of a headache, kind of early doors, if they don't get it right. You're right. I think that pay in itself isn't a leading reason why people walk out the profession. I think it is workload, stress, mental health. are much higher on people's agenda than pay. However, as you said, for a lot of teachers, it's becoming very real, and the mortgage issue is something that's hit people really hard because they've just had to swallow it up. You know, I'm in the same boat as you. We've remortgaged, a couple of months ago. You know, I am now £200-300 worse off a month, and that means personally less opportunities for my children and things that I can do with them. So eventually that does smart a little bit, especially as teachers. We feel like we're being kind of, our own children, our own livelihoods is being put, on hold if for economic or kind of ideological reasons. I don't think the massive pay rises are going to be on the table. I think that's going to be difficult because inflation's lower. I think Labour have got a bit of a kind of steal on that. That they don't have to go for this big pay rise. It'd be interesting to know what happens with the doctors. I know they're going to renegotiate, and maybe the NEU might be watching that very carefully to see what that looks like going forward. I mean, it's just really interesting watching it. But ultimately, that document is in the Department of Education. It's within the civil service. I think there's some transparency needed to know what that document says. What were the recommendations, and then what is this new administration going to do about it? It's really interesting almost straight away. Jonathan Mount Stevens in the writing in the, he's a deputy head teacher in the schools week, talked about kind of some kind of key things to kind of take forward. He's talking about taking time, but I don't know if pay is one of those things. So if we could just kind of show some kind of snippets of what Jonathan said in Schools Week. Value the workforce, which obviously, literally as he says, this might seem obvious, but it's not something we've kind of had. This constant kind of weaponizing of education policies. I think immediately, and I've forgotten the guy's name. There was a guy that's, I think he resigned before he got kind of pushed because he was criticised about kind of making some policies very kind of political. The best policy might not be education policy. And this is something that me and Brent have talked about a lot, about these kind of social Venn diagrams with education, and fixing kind of using education as a way to fix all of society's woes. Might be difficult, but they are sometimes very much interlinked. And for balance, we need to say that actually there have been some things that the previous administration did do, some particularly around kind of reading and maths. It wasn't something that was particularly kind of done well during the election, but there are some kind of fantastic results coming from reading, especially kind of from early years and primary schools. They're doing some absolutely superb work around reading in particular, which the new administration shouldn't just throw out the window just because they were, in inverted commas, Tory or Conservative policies. So what would you like to see, Hannah, in the next couple of months, 6 months?
Oh, well, I'm still lobbying that everybody that's been teaching over 10 years should get a bonus. Keep them in there. Then you have to pay it back if you leave within a certain number of years. I don't know.
We laugh in education. No, this is normal policy in a private company. This is there was that kind of the old school, the old boy thing about you got to watch or whatever after so many years or whatever. It's normal practice to value long service.
Exactly. But I do agree in terms of like the bits that have done well, like the English and maths and things, certainly kind of looking at the knowledge rich curriculum that came through. But also the flip side of that, I do think it has put a lot of pressure on these kids to really study, and a lot of focus on kind of English and maths at GCSEs. I know a lot of schools now have their GCSE kids all the way up to their exams, and have like booster sessions and lessons, whereas not they used to be put on study leave and it was up to them and kind of thing. So I feel like that has put a lot of more onus on the teachers. And I know, for example, my group, they were in so many boosters for English and maths. I didn't see my food tech group who had the last exam for quite some time, and then they were exhausted and I didn't get to do what I needed to do with them. So I think like it's that I'd be really intrigued to see that kind of joy of learning and that kind of focus on culture and building well-rounded children that can survive afterwards, rather than basically these kids that are full of anxiety and stress because of the situation. I think it'll be interesting to see which bits they pick and which bits go. And I don't know whether you can balance it. I don't know whether you can do kind of really knowledge rich, kind of heavy with the light other side. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
Brilliant. So, I mean, that actually brings us on nicely to the second story we had. But obviously, unfortunately, we haven't been able to connect with our guests, which is unfortunate because, you know, I really didn't know this was the case. I didn't realise that. I knew that what I used to call expressive arts at school, but drama in particular, hasn't actually got or didn't have until a week or so ago, an actual program of study, something that everyone could kind of get behind. And actually, kind of once you start looking, this is the interesting thing. It's like pulling that bit of straw. Once you kind of look at this, it's interesting that Dr. James Shea actually kind of, as he's published this, says the DofE have refused to recognise drama as a national curriculum subject in its own right. So the sector itself has kind of got together to build this program, which is terrible in a way, because I'm a huge advocate of drama. I made sure that one of the key things that me and my wife did was make sure that we wanted our kids to go to a drama club or drama activities, because it's just for confidence, for speaking out loud, all the things that teachers take for granted in terms of talking out loud and not being afraid of an audience and kind of making your voice heard, and all these things all come from these subjects. Overall, once you start looking at these statistics, the data looks absolutely terrible. Again, a graph tells it's the second graph we're going to show tonight that shows 1 million stories, isn't it? You look at the ones that are negative. We've got art, drama, music, citizenship, and performing and expressive arts. They're literally the outliers on all those subjects. And the Guardian then straight away, fewer pupils in England study drama at media, at GCSE and A level as well. So there's a drop off then because there's no input at kind of key stage 3. Obviously, then when it gets to GCSE, it kind of gets there. So I'm not an expert in this. Hannah, you are a bit more of an expert in the kind of well, it's even silly to say really creative subjects, but they are vitally important. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's nice to see that whether it transpires, but it was nice seeing in the manifesto that the arts were going to have more of a focus. They were going to add that into the BTEC. So not only do they have to do the English, science, maths, languages, geography or history, they will then have to study an arts. And I think that is such an important, and it could be a pivotal turn, that these subjects will be taken seriously. And like you said, like I did Lambda exams when I was a kid, so I had to learn and speak and say stuff, and it just, although I can't tell it now because I'm just knackered, but it really set me up for life, just being able to stand up and have that confidence to speak in front of people. It's such a skill. And actually I've seen all the year 10s doing their speaking exam currently, and they're all petrified and they're all little anxious little beans, but actually if we put more focus on the drama, they'll have that confidence and it won't affect them when they go into that lesson. There's so many things it threads into. And art was very much the same. Our curriculum is just a page. Like, it's absolutely tiny. It's very, very broad. It's very, very basic. And to be fair, like, Ofsted don't really read into it very well either, because there was a section that says they need to study arts and craft people, artists, and there's a section that says architecture. And as soon as that went in there, every Ofsted inspector will come in and go, where's your architecture scheme? And they will focus on that tiny little bit, not how well we're like teaching about loads of different things. Where's your architecture? And it's quite interesting that people that aren't from the arts, that don't understand the arts and the benefits of it. I'm going to pop up another poster. So this was from the Cultural Learning Alliance, who I'm a massive fan of. And they did loads of research about this. And it kind of says the benefits of it. And I think if schools can get behind this and understand it, then they'll see how much it'll impact everywhere else across the school. And it shouldn't be seen as this kind of DOS easy subject. And I know at a previous school I was at, the careers advisor would say, oh, go do art or go do photography because they're easy subjects. And it's like, they're not easy. They build resilience and well-roundedness, and they're important, and they can add to the curriculum and benefit a child. Like there's doctors in surgeons in London that are being taught by art teachers so they can learn how to problem solve. We build resilience because we encourage kids to make mistakes. If they make mistakes and learn from them in art, they get more marks. And I think it's just quite interesting. So some of these are taking part in the arts activities can increase your cognitive ability by 17%. Learning through the culture can help children achieve in maths and English. It can learning through the arts and culture develop skills and behaviour that lead children to do better in school. Students who take part in art activities at school are 3 times more likely to get a degree, and that even increases. There are pupil premium students, they're far more likely to get a degree if they do an art subject. They're more likely to be employable because they have more employability skills. They're more likely to volunteer. They're more likely to vote as well, which is quite an interesting one. 20% more likely to vote, actually. And also, especially like people that young offenders, they're 18% less likely to re-offend if they get into the arts. And children who take part in arts activities at home during their early years tend to be ahead in maths and English. And arts can keep you healthy, with people who take part in the arts 38% more likely to report good health. And I think they're also more likely to stay in their job and be more happy in their job. And I know Suzanne Cole, who I'm a big advocate of, she's always like, it's not about the money, it's about finding a job that you enjoy and you love. And I think that's what the arts kind of create. So it's I don't know, it'll be interesting to see whether this has a positive impact, that actually if we add in those arts to that curriculum, we've got more GCSE kids taking the arts and it balances that graph back out. And actually whether it is going to help with the mental health crisis that's going on in schools. Is this the answer, or at least help in some ways? I think would be quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And if Bridget Phillipson is watching there, you've now got yourself Hannah Wilson, Arts Czar for the Department of Education here. That was, I mean, I'm 100% behind all that. It's an absolute tragedy. You know, it's always been, whenever I've worked in secondary schools, it's been the most vibrant part of a school. You know, and you know, whenever I could, I always look forward to kind of having a wander down to the departments. I did have a little go in expressive arts once when they did kind of music. Our school did music technology for a little bit, so I kind of was in that mix in kind of the year 7, year 8 rotation for a little bit. But yeah, it's fantastic to kind of be around creative individuals, and as we've said before about kind of the future of Britain and what that looks like in AI. All these skills are there: resilience, creative thought, problem solving. You know, they're all within these subjects. So if we want to move forward as a country, these subjects need to be, I don't know what colour it is, purple to pink, I think is the correct way, but it certainly shouldn't be negative anymore. So we need to kind of make that change. Next week, as I said, we're going to look at the alternative Ofsted reports. We're going to kind of pick through some of that. If you want to be a host of any Teachers Talk Radio, you can go to that QR code to apply to be a host. There's lots going on. You want to listen back to any kind of Education Tonight shows, there's loads now on there. There's loads with Hannah as well, and Paul, and you know, a whole backlog of, if you want to kind of you're missing Brent, you can get your Brent fix on there. You can scan that QR code to jump in there. Should we say a quick thank you to our sponsors? Thank you to John Katz. As always, kind of people want to kind of build up to their summer, CPD. Hannah, have you got the rest of the?
Yeah, we've got teaching how-tos, which ironically, when you talked about AI earlier, they have an AI-generated lesson planner that you can just write in what lesson and what age, and it'll adapt it and stuff, and it's really interesting. So go have a little look at them. Reading Solutions as well. They had their big reading conference with people like Michael Rosen on there, but they kept all the videos of it. So if you go and sign up with them, they'll send you all the videos for free. And Apps for Good as well, who do computing courses not only for computing teachers, but every teacher to upskill themselves in computing, as well as the students and creating their own little apps.
Right, brilliant. So if you're breaking up tomorrow, or if you've got to slog on for another couple of weeks or another week or so, again, always look after yourself, and enjoy your summer holidays if you're breaking up tomorrow. He's not coming back next week.
No, sorry, I can't remember what slide's next. And then I realised, it's Brent. He'll be back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, hopefully. We'll leave unless he doesn't come back from the jungle.
I tell you what's going to happen when he comes back. He can just do an hour on his own and just blast.
The return of Brent. You won't get a word in edgeways when he's back.
No, brilliant. Okay, have a good week. Thank you very much. Thanks, Hannah.
Bye, everybody.